And welcome in everybody to the Fourth and Frames podcast, the redraft season long, however you want to call it, fantasy football podcast for fantasyandframes.com. I am doing my best to fill in for our fearless leader, Jorge Edwards, tonight. He could not make it. So I am joined, as always, by Nate Markham. Nate, how you doing?
Good, Tyler. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, wonderful. I am, just trying to be a single parent for the next few days because my wife's on a work trip. So figuring it out. And we are also joined, our number one sub for Fourth and Frames, Charlie Cangelosi. Charlie, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, Tyler. Happy to be here. Happy to always talk fantasy with the boys.
Absolutely. It's a good time. We are very happy to have you.
Thank you.
So, everyone, thank you for joining. Thank you for listening. For those of you that listen to the Dynasty 365 podcast, we had to move it to Friday because of previously mentioned children that I had to take care of. So we'll be doing that Friday evening.
Nice.
Absolutely. And please stick around for our power hours here at Fantasy and Frames on our YouTube channel. We will go next after this show at 10 o'clock, right? 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock Eastern to the Daily Fix with Joe Matz and Keith Fleming. And then at 10 o'clock, Nate, you will be back for the Shoot the Gap podcast. And I believe I might be joining you tonight and seeing if I can't try not to say anything dumb.
No, you'll be fine. You're with a bunch of dummies, so you'll probably sound smart in combination. Probably not as smart as Joe and Keith have been lately. If you've even remotely just followed a lot of their picks and mix and match however you want to do so. And I'm not rich at all, and so I can't do the 150 entries for $10 a piece like a lot of the big wigs can. But I mean, throw in a couple $12 here and there and a few of the $1 just for fun, and they've been spot on. They've done a really good job, so it's worth the investment, which is free. So take advantage of that.
Absolutely, they've had awesome picks. I believe if people are listening to them, they made some people a lot of money over the past few weeks. Just so everyone is aware, that is our DFS podcast here at Fantasy and Frames, the Daily Fix. You can check them out at 9. And you know what? Even if you're new to DFS, copy and paste, man. They're out there for free. Go for it. They're really good at what they do.
Yeah.
So we are going to go ahead and start with our news and notes. And we're going to start with the headliner here of something that has finally happened. Matt Rule has been let go by David Tepper and the Carolina Panthers. I wish we had some kind of applause drop, but we do not. I will start hitting Jorge up about that drop too. Maybe he'll make one of those.
Exactly. If you listen close enough, you'll probably hear the entire collective of Carolina fan base clapping at the same time.
Yes, all 27 of them.
Exactly. It's terrible.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. All right. So what does it mean for their offense?
Yeah, so I was going to say.
Are you excited about Matt Rule being fired? Do you think it will negatively, positively affect their offense, or just be neutral and they'll just continue to be wildly underwhelming? Nate?
I mean, the hardest thing is they have PJ Walker. So, I mean, the expectations are minimal at best, unfortunately, going forward. If they had all their pieces, which, again, I don't know. I guess I was overly optimistic that Baker was going to be the answer. And I was let down in the fact that it never came to fruition. Nothing looks right. And you can look at it from two ways. Number one, this is the team rallying together to avenge the unfortunate situation they've been put in, and they make this miraculous second half, if you want to call it that, turnaround, and they start scoring. Or they continue to play the same football and realize it's not just Matt Rule. He just added he cooked the shitty ingredients too long even more and ruined the recipe.
Yes. Do you feel the same way, Charlie? Do you think it's going to get any better?
I mean, I don't really know how much further you can go down for the Panthers. They might be the worst team in football right now, and I think it's if I'm a Panthers fan, it's like kind of like the worst perfect storm ever. It's like Matt Rule gets fired and Baker Mayfield's missing time. So I guess you're getting an upgrade in both. You could say I don't really know. It's kind of hard to tell, but I would be like slightly more optimistic if I were a Panthers fan now.
Yeah, I actually am kind of there with you. I'd like to see Baker get back. I'll always have a soft spot in my heart for Baker Mayfield, but I mean their OC is still Ben McAdoo. They're capable. They should be capable of running a better offense. I feel. I think having Matt Rule out of the building is absolutely addition by subtraction for that entire team, regardless of the shitty ingredients that they have that Nate referenced.
Yes, so eloquently as I. But I mean, like their passing offense versus expected, as far as the expected points, is a negative 35, which is last in football. Not just last in football. The Pittsburgh Steelers are 31st at negative 20.36. They are at negative 35.22. It's a 15-point expected gap, which is the same gap separating essentially the number 16 Cleveland Browns from the number 24 Washington Commanders.
Oh my gosh.
And I mean, it's just, it can't get worse. So it's got to be better.
Yeah, you're right. It definitely cannot get worse. I guess if we're speaking about something that is staying the same, Cooper Rush is going to start another week. We have another week of Dak Prescott not playing, which it seems like he's going to be back week 7. He's been throwing, he's been practicing a bit this week, but they've already announced Cooper Rush is going to start. Mm-hmm. I hope their offense can keep up some of the momentum that they've had with Cooper Rush. They've really kept it simple with him. Yeah. And I mean, Dak's a genius when he's under center. I mean, he can run an offense like no other. So, Charlie, do you think CeeDee Lamb, Ezekiel Elliott, Michael Gallup, these guys are getting a huge boost when Dak comes back, or is it just a little bump?
I think it's a huge boost. I saw someone tweeted before that in the past 5 years since Dak's been there, their offense has been top 10 in like years 2017, 2018, 2019, and then 2020 and 2022, they're like outside the top 20. What happened in those years? Dak got injured. So when Dak's in there, they're a top 10 offense. I think they all get massive boosts. CeeDee Lamb is still a solid value with Cooper Rush. When Dak gets back, he'll be fine. The run game is something that I'm interested to look at because Tony Pollard has kind of stepped up a little bit, and Zeke has taken a dip in production. So I'm interested to see how that works out. But yeah, when Dak gets back. And also I want to note, in one of my fantasy leagues, I was able to get Dak off waiver. Like someone just dropped Dak like outright. So, if anyone wants to find a QB, check to see if Dak's there because, he'll be down there kind of on ESPN in the 0 point range. So if you can pick him up, go grab him, stick him in your IR spot, and he'll be back next week.
Absolutely. And someone that's not going to be back next week is Damian Harris. He's going to miss multiple games. We mentioned it before we went live. My opinion, at least, that they said he's going to miss multiple games. They said IR was a potential outcome. They have not placed him on IR, so it doesn't seem like they're going to right now. But the way their schedule lines up, they have a game week 6, 7, 8, and 9. They have a bye week 10. So just looking at it, it makes sense to me that he might not be healthy enough for the next 3 games, and then why rush him back before the bye? So there could be a real chance that Damian Harris is out until week 11, and Ramondre Stevenson is just putting fantasy football teams on his back and dragging them to the playoffs. So are you guys as excited about Ramondre as I am?
Yeah.
Easy enough.
Yeah, I've got him in a couple leagues. I'm very happy with what he's able to do.
Good. All right. Rashad Penny out for the year. That sucks, but unfortunately it seemed inevitable. It was, Thanos type stuff right there.
Yeah, we kind of expected. I was hoping maybe longer, just because everything was going really well. All of his expected yards after contact, all the metrics were like top 10, top 12 for an offense that seemingly was supposed to be really bad. But Geno has helped support a running game that has been relevant because there's a passing game. I thought, hey, if you told me Geno would be top 15 in completion percentage, I'd have said, okay, maybe, short ADOT, a little dink and dunk, but to be first overall and be able to move the chains and everything, it's really been impressive. And let me ask you guys this, as far as this quote goes, that Pete Carroll said that Drew Lock is nipping at the heels of Geno Smith.
I saw that.
Why say that? I know it's coach speak. What good? I mean, is he the motivator that motivates by fear entirely and just wants Geno to feel the pressure? Because if that's the case, that's stupid. Because why change something? Let Geno relax and play the way he has been, which is, kind of cool, carefree football. And maybe they're not the best team in the league, but they're sure as hell more fun to watch than a team that we expected them to be.
Yeah. I mean, Pete Carroll is relentlessly, annoyingly positive. Like, he's never had a bad word to say about anyone in his life. I remember when everyone was talking about the Seahawks trading for Jimmy Garoppolo prior to the season, Pete Carroll said, "Oh, Drew Lock would be the top quarterback drafted in this entire draft class." And then he never even had a chance of starting. I don't even worry about that. But with the Seahawks, if Kenneth Walker was on waivers, were you guys just blowing your entire budget on him?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. For sure. I think that, like right after Penny got injured, I was telling my dad, like, oh, this guy, he's a rookie. He's gonna be really solid. And then 10 seconds later, broke off for a 69-yard rushing touchdown. So he looks really good. He's one of the top rookies drafted in dynasty leagues. I think he'll with the workload now he's going to get, he'll be solid.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to jump into some practice reports here. Jahan Dotson will be out this week. Rashad Bateman did not practice. Pat Freiermuth got a concussion this past week. Nate, I think you said he has had multiple concussions, so that is a bit of a concern.
Yeah, if what I remember reading was multiple. I don't know if that's multiple dating back to his time in college or as a professional the last 2 years. But yeah, I mean, one is obviously bad, and we're probably overcautious about concussions nowadays, as we should be. Probably should have always been. Mm-hmm. It's not that I think that it should be lessened, but yeah, you add that to the mix, and could be a little bit of a downside. Because I got to tell you, I couldn't begin to tell you what they would do at tight end if it wasn't Freiermuth. I'm gonna look and see if there's anybody
I don't know who their backup is.
I know.
I almost always know who these backups are.
I have
that's no idea.
Connor Hayward.
Oh, okay, that's right.
Yep, there you go. Connor Hayward,
little brother,
showing early chemistry with Kenny Pickett, according to ESPN.
Great.
There you go.
Well, he shouldn't be rostered, so don't worry about him.
Exactly.
All right. Jonathan Taylor did not practice again. Nyheim Hines practiced, but he was in a red no contact jersey because of the concussion. Drake London and Kyle Pitts practiced, so that is good news. Mm-hmm. If you have Kyle Pitts on your team, you're still starting him, right? You kind of have to.
Yeah, you don't have a choice.
No.
The people we said, if you lucked into them in later rounds, you might start over him. I think the only one that was a choice by all of us was Tyler Higbee. Is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only one.
Yep.
All right. James Conner is dealing with a rib issue. The entirety of the Cardinals running back room is injured except for Eno Benjamin. So even if James Conner plays, would you still start Eno Benjamin, Charlie?
If Conner plays, yeah, I think I would, but in probably deeper leagues, excuse me. With James Conner there, he's been getting like a solid, steady workload, nothing too crazy, nothing on Conner's level, but they're probably going to limit Conner's snap count with dealing with that rib injury, and I don't know about Darrell Williams. I mean, maybe he'll be a factor, but
Nope,
I think
he's out.
He's completely out.
He's out.
Okay. Yeah, then I would definitely start. For sure.
All right. And a very, very sad development. Not a single Saints starting wide receiver practiced. No Michael Thomas, no Jarvis Landry, no Chris Olave. So Taysom time?
Again?
Yeah, that's rough.
Still, I mean, yeah, it's pretty ugly in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Maybe Kamara time. Maybe that's what we can hope for.
No, I think it's Marquez Callaway time, guys. I think he's the guy over there.
Wait, it's not Traquan Smith time?
It's never Traquan Smith time. It's never been. It's been the clock has been struck on Traquan about 13 times over the last 3 years, and the cuckoo never came out of its clock. It never said anything. It just stayed there. A broken watch is right twice a day, and a broken Saints offense never relies on Traquan.
Poor Saints.
I know.
Tua is out again. Teddy Bridgewater. It's weird. I didn't read into all of it. They said they were planning on starting Skylar Thompson.
Yeah,
but was Teddy officially ruled out?
I don't know if I ever saw official, but I believe I saw that coach said that he's not playing. Now, I don't know if that means that they just were waiting to figure out what they're going to do with the practice squad replacement or however they were going to do with their roster. I don't know the ins and outs of that, but I do believe that I saw, and I we got the interwebs. I guess I can just type in Teddy Bridgewater and man, what do you know? It'll say,
okay, Teddy Bridgewater may progress through the protocol. He'll do so with very limited practice time, if any. So Thompson is it for this versus the Vikings, if I can speak.
Right.
All right. Well, there you go. I think that will be mentioned later in our Plays and Fade segment. Last thing, Devontae Adams was charged with the lightest of misdemeanors possible. Nate, you said it was a $250 fine, essentially.
That is the expected fine. Yes, I believe that it was as minimal as possible. Misdemeanor assault statute 50-169,
yes,
I believe is pretty much next to nothing. It's jaywalking if you want to do a comparison, I think.
I have shoved people harder than that at work when I ran into them coming around a blind corner. So
RG3 with the quote of the day, by the way, the tweet of the day said, if they're charging Devontae Adams with misdemeanor assault for a push, what are they charging Draymond Green with for the knockout punch of Jordan Poole? My guess is probably, I would say, aggravated. Well, no, that's murder. I think that he murdered Jordan Poole, because that was
first
destructive.
Yeah.
Whew, it was nasty.
That was
Oof. All right. And a reminder to everyone, DeAndre Hopkins is back after this week. He will be finishing up his 6-game suspension this week, and he will be back. I will also mention him later in our Plays and Fade segment.
Perfect. Hey, real quick question.
Yes.
Oh, Malcolm, how you doing, man? Good to see you, my friend. Wants to know, would you trade Michael Carter for Drake London?
Yes.
I'm a yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he was 11 for 21 and 2 touchdowns last week. Breece Hall continues to take more and more of that workload. Carter could be a flex rest of the year. Drake London could be a wide receiver too rest of the year. So
I think that's an easy one. Do it right now, Malcolm. Jump off. Well, keep watching, I guess, or just leave it on 2 screens.
Do it while you're watching.
Yes.
While you're and then comment and tell us when you do it, because we got nothing better to do. We're just chit chatting.
Yes. Hulk smash accept.
Yes.
I've gotten 2 Marvel references, and I'm pretty proud of that.
You are doing Jorge very proud. What would you do as far as this goes? What's your take on stashing OBJ? I've seen and heard, Charlie, I know there's Buffalo reports of fans in Buffalo being upset that they wouldn't want him coming there, and a number of other teams all, bemoaning no OBJ. But from a fantasy perspective, if he's available to, and you have the roster space that wouldn't occupy you, that cost you to drop anybody, etc. Would you guys stash OBJ right now?
I mean, it depends. If my team's like pretty stacked on wide receivers as it is, like, my draft is pretty well. I made some trades and I had a spot. Yeah, I would stash him because he could be like a wide receiver 1 or 2 on any of those teams, like immediately. I was trying to get him in my dynasty league just for cheap, but I don't know if that's going to work out. If anyone else can do that, I would suggest trying that out. I would assume people are kind of either tired of having him on their bench, not doing anything, and would like a pick maybe. I don't know. Yeah, if you can, I wouldn't put it as a high priority, but if it's possible, go for it.
My take is no. Reason being, they're saying mid-November. We're probably looking at early December, mid-December before he plays any meaningful downs. And if we're talking about stashing, just let me go through this real quick for you. Teams on bye in week 6: Detroit Lions, Raiders, Titans, Texans. Teams on bye in week 7: Bills, Vikings, Eagles, Rams. Teams on bye in week 8: Chiefs, Chargers. Teams on bye in week 9: Browns, Cowboys, Broncos, Giants, Steelers, 49ers. And it just keeps on going. So now is when roster depth is the most important in fantasy football. So I would not be spending a roster spot on OBJ right now.
Fair enough.
All right, let's jump into our plays and fades segment. This is when we go through each position: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. Each one of us is going to provide some names for you. The guys that we are going to choose for plays, they will be outside of the top 12 in quarterbacks or tight ends, or outside of the top 24 in running backs or wide receivers. And for our fades, we're going to be taking the opposite: people inside the top 12 at quarterback and tight end, and people inside the top 24 at running back and wide receiver, and letting you know why you should play or fade them. So let's jump right in with our plays. Nate, what do you have for quarterback?
Yeah, so hopefully I can finish as decently well as you did last week, Tyler. You went out on the Carson Wentz limb, and he returned value. QB6 on the week. Jacoby Brissett, not quite so much. He was QB 16, which is probably higher than what his ECR was realistically. So, I mean, if you were just trying to gain value, you did it. Mine, I have a couple, and I don't like either one. They leave a weird kind of film in your mouth, but it's okay because I think the situation, it makes sense. And the first one's Jimmy G. He's a QB 17 ECR wise against this Atlanta Falcons team. It appears that Vegas might be onto something. I mean, they have this implied point total of 24.75 for San Francisco, higher than what, you may expect for a team that's not exactly the most prolific offensively, but Atlanta is not exactly the most amazing defense either. For me, I'm not really scared of this Atlanta pass rush. I think that's the reason why I'm on Jimmy G the most, is because what they've had to do without Trent Williams and without this offensive line being cohesive is they've moved George Kittle to the inside, and he's been blocking a hell of a lot more than what anybody really wants to see, especially Jimmy G, because he definitely would like to lean on Kittle. And I think that's what this is doing. It's giving me that George Kittle kind of vibes. I'm feeling like this could be a George Kittle week on top of the amazing matchup that you're going to get out of Debo. I think Ayuk and AJ Terrell might be matched up. It's tough to say exactly how they're going to move them around. But if you look at the San Francisco defense as a whole, even their secondary, no Nick Bosa. I think Atlanta might actually have a chance to score a little bit and keep the game competitive enough that they're going to rely on some of the passing work, just enough to slide within that QB 12. Not saying he's going to be a QB 4 or 5 or 6 like Carson Wentz, but Atlanta, second most air yards allowed, 5th best completion percentage from the quarterback, 4th most passing yards allowed, 2nd most red zone attempts allowed. All of these different metrics just build up to the idea that Jimmy G could get it rolling and could actually keep it rolling and actually give us a 250 2-score week. And I think that with the way quarterbacks have been so terrible this year outside the top 4, that's all you need to be a top 10 quarterback realistically is 250 and 2. Don't turn the ball over. And I guess, what do you guys think? Jimmy G even pass the eye test for you as far as this week, or is that something too outlandish? Charlie?
No, I mean, I don't think that's that outlandish. I mean, they're playing Atlanta, right?
Yeah.
In week 6. Yeah, they haven't been a good defense at all this year, and he's got the weapons around him. He's got the tools necessary. So I think he's a solid big guy. I like him. Nothing bad.
The other play is a little more challenging for me because I've seen him play so bad, and it just scary as Matthew Stafford, even though he's QB 13, because I think we as a whole collective community have a hard time putting him less than that because we know what he has. Well, he has Cooper Kupp. So you really need Cooper Kupp can make you a QB1 on the week just alone. But what we've seen this year is different Matthew Stafford than what we've seen in the past. Let's go back the last 3 weeks. Last 3 weeks, Matthew Stafford is 4 for 13 in red zone attempts. That's 31st in the NFL. 0 touchdowns. On the whole, as a season, he's 10 of 25 with 4 touchdowns. I mean, sub 50% completion percentage in the red zone. Very un-Stafford-like. Carolina, if you're looking at a defense, I mean, as we talked earlier about this Matt Rule situation, this could be like a cautionary tale. What will they do? Will they perform for the new head coach in DC? Or are they going to still appear to be this Carolina defense that is just, garbage? 20 red zone attempts. The defense allows the 3rd most drives, the 3rd most plays, 8th most fantasy points allowed to the quarterback position, and they don't get to the quarterback. They're 27th in sack percent, so Stafford should have the time needed. Carolina runs zone coverage like 70+% of the time. Stafford against the zone, 80% completion percentage versus 60% man. He has the bet, that matchup alone. I think when they start moving the ball, and their rushing attack has been non-existent. We've seen that. Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson are pretty much worthless. I think this could very easily be that game that both Cooper Kupp and, dare I say, Allen Robinson might have a 75-yard game. Hard to predict. And that's me going crazy. Isn't that crazy? Easy. I'm excited. I'm like, dare I say, Allen Robinson could have a heroic week, and I go 75 as the over. But he has done really well against zone coverage, much more so than against man. So, yeah, Matthew Stafford, Jimmy G, the 2 most boring pocket passers, both finishing as a QB1 this week.
Oh, man. Well, Nate, I hope for the best for you, man.
Thank you.
I'm cheering for you.
I appreciate that.
So let's not try to focus too much on the positive and negative at one time. So Nate, do you want to jump into your fades at quarterback as well?
I can. I can tell you inside. This is a hard one because I don't think there's a case that I would ever actually fade Jalen Hurts. But I'm going to say that I don't think he finishes in the top 6 to 7 at his position. Now, a lot of that has the fact to do with the last 2 weeks leading up to this week and this week's matchup. It's against the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas Cowboys have been, if you ask me, maybe the most dangerous front 4, front 5, front 6, front 7, however you want to look at their pass attack, because they've been rotating so many pieces in football. The fact that they can get to Jalen Hurts is dangerous. Hurts hasn't had a passing touchdown the last 2 weeks. His point total has been exclusively rushing touchdowns, which, if you look at what Dallas has done extremely well over the last couple of weeks, is they've reduced rushing quarterbacks, or at least quarterbacks in general, from finding the end zone when they get into the red zone. Micah Parsons alone, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I don't have it in front of me, I think it's 7 tackles for a loss in the red zone on the season. So when you get to the red zone, he's just that relentless force, and I can see that having that effect on Hurts, and he's dangerous through the air. We know that. Dallas sits back and they play, partially zone. They've got good corners. Everybody's playing above their head. I like Jalen Hurts a lot. I love Jalen Hurts on the season, but I think this is that week where, division rival, it's going to be a tricky situation. I think they're going to probably lean more on that running attack and hope they can control the ball that way against that fierce Cooper Rush-led offense. That's my fade. It hurts to say, but I'm going to go with that. So what do you guys got at your Charlie? You got some running backs, right?
I do. I do have a few running backs that I'm playing and I'm fading. So the first guy we mentioned before, Eno Benjamin, he's currently ranked RB 27 for the week. We said James Conner is dealing with a rib injury, and Darrell Williams is going to be out with the sprained knee. Now, with Darrell Williams missing time, I think Eno Benjamin can definitely step up and become more of an RB2 than he already is. He already leads all Arizona running backs in offensive rushing and fumble PFF grades. His offensive grade is top 15 among all running backs in the league. His rushing grade is tied for 9th with Cordero Patterson in the league. And his fumble grade, I think, is in the 22. It's around there. He also leads the team in yards per route run, or in running backs, yards per route run and elusiveness rating. He also has a pretty solid receiving floor. He's had 4 targets in every game except week 4 against Carolina. In the red zone, he's got 6 red zone rushing attempts. And now that may not sound like a lot, but it's only 2 less than James Conner. So people have drafted James Conner thinking he would be the clear-cut RB1, which he is the RB1, but it's not by as much of a sizable lead as other backfields are. This backfield has spread out the work a lot more than we expected. And with Darrell Williams out, I think he could have a solid game against the Seattle Seahawks, who have allowed the 5th most fantasy points to running backs. As we saw against Jamal Williams torched that defense up. So I think he'll have a solid week. My other play at running back is Travis Etienne. He's 1 spot lower, ranked at RB 28. And Robinson, he looked a little bit better than Robinson in week 5. They both had 10 carries. Etienne had a little under 50 more yards, 71 yards compared to J. Rob's 27. Etienne had 5 targets to Robinson's 2. And Robinson has seen a pretty significant decrease in attempts. I remember a few weeks back, we were on the show, and Jorge had asked me, do you think, James Robinson can sustain this fantasy relevancy? And I said, yeah, if he keeps up the workload, because he was getting 11 attempts week 1, 23 week 2, 17 week 3. Like, he was getting solid workload, and it was producing fantasy points. Now that workload has just went south. Like, 8 attempts week 4, 10 attempts week 5, tied with Etienne. And they're going up they went up against Houston last week, which has allowed the 2nd most fantasy points to RB. So it's not like, they went up against a good defense. And they go up against the Colts defense in week 6, and they've been nothing special. 18th most fantasy points to RBs. And among running backs with at least 20% of 104 rushing attempts, Etienne ranks top 15 in yards per attempt, PFF rush grade, breakaway percentage, and yards per route run. So what I'm thinking Peterson's trying to do here is make this backfield more of a split. Obviously, you start off the season with Robinson, and he was really good, but they want to bring Etienne into this lineup. He could really, do some good stuff in this offense, and I think his receiving upside will be what gives him the edge over James Robinson. So those are 2 guys that I like this week outside the top 24. What do you guys think?
Let me ask you a question. So Indianapolis on the season has allowed the 2nd most receiving yards to running backs, 269. If you had to take an over-under on Travis Etienne, would you take the over or under 45 yards receiving?
Travis Etienne receiving yards over 45? Yeah, I take the over. If the Colts are letting up the 2nd most receiving yards, was that to running backs or just?
Yeah, to running back position.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I would definitely take the over on that. Yeah, he had a solid receiving upside. I'll take the over.
Perfect. I asked that because I think that's just one of the many bets you could make at underdog.com, where if you have particular hunches like Charlie has, and you can go in and you can make isolated prop bets. All you need to do is launch the Underdog Fantasy app, use your account, sign in, head over to the Pick'em section, select the over-under tab, choose the game you like, And don't forget, before you actually deposit anything, use promo code FRAMES for 100% on your first deposit up to $100. Again, fantasy code FRAMES, the underdog.com or is it an app? Is it? Yeah, it's probably
It's
both.
an app.
Do whichever one you want. Underdog fantasy. You know what the hell it is. Just use frames. Bet that over. I don't even know what the prop is, honestly, for there. I can't pull it up because I'm in good old Missouri, but I'm guessing 45. So if it's not 45, we gave you even more ammunition. Let's say it's 30. Bam, smash that over, get paid, and let us know how you did. Charlie, who are you fading?
My fades for this week. My first one is Najee Harris. He's the RB20 this week. He's just looked really bad all season, and this is a guy that people drafted in the first round. I know I drafted him in the first round in one of my leagues, and I'm very much regretting it. He plays Tampa Bay in week 6. They've allowed the third fewest fantasy points to running backs. He's got, it's not like he's not getting the workload. Like, he's getting roughly 12 to 15 rushing attempts every game. He's just really not making much of it. And, red zone rushing attempts, he's got 10 on the season, which ranks, top 15 among all running backs. Half of them are within the 5. That ranks top 10 among all running backs. And he's only got one touchdown to prove it. They started Kenny Pickett, the rookie QB, and he's found a pretty solid connection with George Pickens. They've been playing pretty well. And this team's going to be from behind. The defense, it hasn't really done that well. Mm-hmm. And I think the run game is going to be less of a focal point for this offense. Mike Tomlin's talked about Jaylen Warren, and he's starting to get a little bit more workload. They like him there. I think Najee Harris, for where he's priced at and where he's ranked, I don't think he's not gonna hit that. And my other fade this week will be Kareem Hunt. He's right at the end of that list at RB24. All the 5 teams that the Browns have played this season are within the top 15 in most points allowed.
Well, let me ask you a question there, Charlie. What came first, the chicken or the Nick Chubb for that top 15 number there?
I'm
sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. What he said is they were top 15 until they played Nick Chubb, and now they probably got crushed out of that, right?
Yeah, fair. I mean, if we're talking about guys within the top 24, I mean, I kind of have to stick to it, but you
touched an exposed nerve with Kareem Hunt, and that's been his play for like 16 weeks straight. So
yep,
about time someone finally checked him.
He's the RB17 on the year.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how he's going to do against the Patriots. They've allowed the 6th fewest fantasy points to running backs. They shut down Jamal Williams, who I said against Seattle blew up, that defensive line, and then the next week was only allowed 5 points. So, I mean, I love Kareem Hunt too. I have him in a league, but I don't think this week will be it. Tyler, sorry, maybe next week, maybe down the line. We'll see. I don't know.
I'll be okay. I've dissociated the Browns' success or failure from my enjoyment of football, so doesn't matter.
I trust you. I know you'll be fine. But
all
yeah,
right,
what do you guys think of those fades?
I mean, I agree with Najee. The Steelers. I mean, Najee Harris to be ranked as the RB20 in week 6 of the fantasy football season just speaks volumes of what that Steelers offense is and the kind of year that he's had. Mm-hmm. And I think he's probably ranked 20 just based off of who he is. If he was any other player, if his name wasn't Najee Harris, if he wasn't drafted in the first round, he'd be down in the 30s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a rough go. And the problem is I don't know if it's a problem. He might be one of those guys you actually could flip and get something for if you have somebody else. I mean, that's the caveat to this. He was, most people's first round, early second round pick. And if you did that and you still attacked running backs later, or if you got lucky to hit some on the wire, you got Kenneth Walker or some of the others, maybe. But yeah, I think the collective feeling on Najee is so down right now that he needs that big week to blow up. And I don't think it's this week either.
No. All right, so let's jump into some wide receiver plays. Before I do that, I would like to give Nate a shout out for his running back play of the week last week. Brees Hall, RB4.
Thank you.
Good work.
Yeah.
All right, so wide receiver plays this week. I'm going to start with talking about Rondale Moore, who is currently the wide receiver 40 on the week. I took a look at fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position by defenses, and the Seahawks are pretty good, man. Unfortunately, that's a mirage. So don't trust that number. Just look at their schedule. They played just a terrible Broncos team, and they won 11-10. They played the 49ers, who ran all over them the week that Trey Lance got hurt. They played the Falcons, who ran on them, and that was the one game where Kyle Pitts, tight end, not wide receiver, had a big game and made people excited. They played a Lions team with no wide receivers, and TJ Hawkinson dropped 180 on them. And then they played a Saints team with no wide receivers, and Taysom Hill absolutely just faced them. So, don't be scared of the Seattle defense. It's not good. They're giving up the 9th most passing yards in the league, and they're tied for 5th in surrendering 8 passing touchdowns to opposing teams. So that's 5th worst, however you want to look at it. Rondale is much more involved. He came off injury off his first 3 weeks. He's played 86 and 91% of the snaps in successive weeks. He has 13 targets in those 2 weeks. And as I mentioned before, DeAndre Hopkins will be back next week. This might be the only week that you can play him confidently. So if you have Rondale Moore on your squad, I would go ahead and throw him into a flex spot and feel pretty good about it. Yeah. And I mean, are you guys throwing him into a starting lineup this week?
I like what I've seen personally, because I sure as hell don't trust him. I mean, it's him and Hollywood and really nothing else. And I don't know if they're going to be comfortable. Kind of like, I do agree with Charlie with the Eno Benjamin play, simply because if you're hurting at running back or you need that, or you're like you and I, Tyler, and we have him in a 14-team league. I love Eno Benjamin in that, but they will need another piece. And Rondale, we saw that last year, man. There is the pure league winning or week winning upside out of that guy is there. It's hard to find that type of ceiling that low as far as a wide receiver ranking goes.
He's got juice.
He does have juice.
Next up for wide receiver plays is Jakobi Meyers. He is the wide receiver 29 on the week. He's playing a Browns team that has a defense that is absolutely reeling. That defense is getting run all over. And I believe that's just going to set them up to get passed on because they can't seem to figure out how to run a coverage scheme, which is very unfortunate. And Jakobi Meyers is the wide receiver 1 in New England. And he's missed week 2 and 3. When he's on the field, he's elite. He's 6th in the NFL in receiving yards per game with 87. I mean, that's up there with, it's not up there, but he's in the conversation with people like Cooper Kupp and Stephon Diggs. He's only 2 or 3 spots behind him. He's 11th in fantasy points per game with 14.3 points in half PPR scoring. I know fantasy points per game can be a bit of a flawed metric, but it is at least a lighthouse to guide you to where you want to go. Mm-hmm. I feel really good about Jakobi Meyers this week. Are you guys playing him?
I unfortunately don't have him, but I've liked what I've seen so far. I mean, the lack of, well, I don't want to say the lack of talent, but the lack of real superstar fantasy value wide receivers in that New England Patriots offense is kind of given Myers the opportunity to shine in terms of fantasy and also just production. I mean, the positive touchdown regression was going to happen. He didn't score anything last year, so
right.
Yeah.
He's back. And let's run through these 2 fades real quick, which I hope I don't get too many people mad at me. I'm fading Jamar Chase this week. The only team he has surpassed 55 yards and caught a touchdown on was the Steelers, who they're not very good. They're one of the worst in the league without TJ Watt. He's going to be facing the Saints, facing Marshawn Lattimore. I don't see defenses doing anything different against the Bengals. They're playing a shell cover 2. They're stopping the big play, which they lived and died on in 2021. That is how they got to the Super Bowl. That is how they got to the playoffs, was the big play with Ja'Marr Chase, because defenses said, oh, this rookie's not going to burn us. Oh, well, no, unfortunately he did. The Bengals are tied for 5th worst in the NFL. They only have 13 plays of 20-plus yards so far in the season. So you can't bench Ja'Marr Chase because of that ceiling. But I think this is more of a pump the brakes, lower your expectations a bit. They need to be tempered, because until Zach Taylor shows that he can scheme his way out of a wet paper bag, I'm not feeling great about Ja'Marr Chase, at least with his current rankings.
Yeah, it's rough too, because we really saw last year in so many of those games where it just game change, and we thought that this offensive line was going to be upright, at least leave Joe upright. Cincinnati's been a mess too. My God, there's so many teams that just, we expected this the AFC just to run away from everybody, and kind of been let down. Like we talked about the Chargers earlier, a lot of that stems from that offensive line.
Yes. Yeah. The AFC has been, I don't know if it's been as much of maybe it's more of a bloodbath than it is disappointing, but certainly, the Bengals are certainly disappointing. I personally bet them to finish last in the AFC North.
Yeah.
Because I got nice odds on it. And I think Zach Taylor sucks.
Yeah, fair.
But we'll see how the AFC plays out. Next on my fades is Jalen Waddle. The Dolphins just have no real way to produce a good passing offense with their 3rd string, 7th round, 25-year-old rookie starting quarterback, Skylar Thompson. I'm happy for the guy. That's awesome that he's starting games in the NFL. Waddle's ranked the wide receiver 14 right now. That seems a little bit ridiculous to me. His rank should drop through the week. Without Tua for the past 2 weeks, Waddle is the wide receiver 67.
Yeesh.
With 8.7 fantasy points in half PPR scoring. That's total over the last 2 weeks. So if you can find a way to not play him this week, I'd go ahead and try to do that.
Yikes.
Yeah. How would you do that? Because I feel like that's another Ja'Marr Chase situation. Like, you can't sit him, can you?
Is it?
I don't know.
That's the thing. Okay, so here let's go to the old rank here, and let's say that you're sitting there looking at a person like, you have Alec Pierce, who has come on as pretty strong the last couple weeks. Alec Pierce or Jalen Waddle?
I would probably, I'd probably still go Waddle, but it's close.
Yeah.
It's real close.
And if you took the names away and you just said this player has averaged, 18 yards per reception, has been targeted 25% of the time, and on those are kind of just made up numbers for Alec Pierce, but they're probably not too far removed from where he's been. Mm-hmm. And he's the only receiver that Matt Ryan's looking downfield towards whatsoever. I would say player B, and it is. It's weird. It's Alec Pierce, and that's, to me, I don't think I could pull that trigger. I don't think I could sit Jalen Waddle, yet everything you've said is entirely right and exactly the right thing you should do. If you just, I don't know. It feels like we as fantasy managers and players of this stupid game would rather be wrong by playing Jalen Waddle and not starting Alec Pierce than be wrong by taking probably the more appropriate play of Alec Pierce, because it's like, now why would I do that? Is what you don't want to talk to yourself about. You'd rather say, Waddle sucks. Yeah. Stupid Dolphins. It's just that's our nature. It's hard to sit. It's hard to sit someone like Najee Harris or Jalen Hurts, which I'm never going to actually tell people to do. That was, quarterback fades are hard within the top 12 because they've all been so bad. Kind of like tight end. Tight end fades and plays are, we're banking on what? We're banking on one thing only: for you to catch the ball over that stupid little white line and get 6 points and immediately be a tight end 8 because you scored a touchdown.
Yes.
That's all you need. Which is why I think, man, some of these things just hurt to say, but I think Evan Ingram is going to be a top 7, top 8 tight end this week. He's starting to get a little more acclimated with Trevor Lawrence. If you look over the last 3 weeks, he's 4th among tight ends in route participation. He's 10th in targets. He's 4th in ADOT across those 3 weeks. Look at Indy again, like you said, points allowed is not exactly the stickiest of metrics, but as a lighthouse, they've allowed the 6th most fantasy points to the position. So you can hear that foghorn in the distance and say, okay, it still stinks. It's still Evan Ingram, but Trevor Lawrence, he has the 4th most touchdowns in the red zone of any quarterback in the league right now, which is crazy to think of. Problem is none of those really have gone to the tight end position. They've been spread out to everybody else. I think 6 different pass catchers have a touchdown in the red zone from Trevor Lawrence. Doesn't exactly bode in Evan Ingram's direction that way, but what it tells me is that there's a likelihood for tight end touchdown upside if you're seeing a quarterback who has the 4th most passing touchdowns in the red zone. At least we know they like to pass the ball when they're in the red zone. Question, going back to our underdog props. If you had to take an over-under for total number of touchdowns scored rushing by Jacksonville, would you take the over or under 2.5?
Ooh, 2.5. I'd take under.
Okay, let's make it 1.5.
Probably still under.
Yes, which means you think they've scored 1 touchdown in 5 games rushing from the red zone. As successful as James Robinson has been, and you'd be correct. Probably wouldn't ask that question if he had 4 or 5. It kind of defeats the whole narrative of that. But that just says the ball's going in Trevor Lawrence's hand when they're in the red zone. I don't really like Indy to stop that, especially with another week of no Shaq Leonard. As far as a fade goes, take a pick. There's a few that I'm not a huge fan of. Realistically, I'm down on Tyler Conklin. I think that with Zach Wilson, the total number of targets has to reduce. Within the top 10, I'm going to fade Hayden Hurst. My biggest concern with that is if T. Higgins doesn't play. But if T. Higgins plays against that same New Orleans defense you were talking about, that New Orleans defense has been excellent against tight ends. The only tight end they've actually played, mind you, and when we're looking at that, it's like, who have they played? Tommy Tremble. They played Kyle Pitts in week 1, and they held Kyle Pitts to 2 receptions on 7 targets. It's probably the most dynamic, which isn't a good testament considering what we've seen out of Kyle Pitts. But that defense is very stingy to the opposing tight ends, and it just feels like that's a letdown game as a whole for Cincinnati again.
Yes. Well, yeah, take your pick at tight end. It's very hard to fade a top 12 tight end at this point.
Yeah,
but
well, you should get credit real quick because your fade was who?
TJ Hawkinson.
TJ Hawkinson, the number 1 tight end in week 4. In week 5, tight end 45. Never did you know Taysom Hill was going to quadruple the number of touchdowns that TJ Hawkinson had. And I'm just kidding. You can't quadruple 0. But yeah, Tyler, congratulations, Tyler, on TJ Hawkinson. Excellent pick. No one listened to you and no one sat him because it's TJ Hawkinson. Yep. And still fell on deaf ears, but it was a great call regardless.
Hey, screaming into the void, baby.
Damn right.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you for joining. I had a very good time. Nate, Charlie, thank you for joining as well.
Of course.
Please stick around for the Daily Fix podcast that we spoke about earlier with Keith Fleming and Joe Matz. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Have a good night.
See you guys. Good luck.